To understand why a 6-0 scoreline means so much more for Canada than for almost any other footballing nation, you have to understand the journey. Canada did not qualify for a World Cup for decades. Generations of Canadian football supporters grew up watching the tournament from the outside, watching Brazil, Argentina, Germany, France build dynasties and legacies, while Canada remained spectators. When Canada finally returned to the World Cup, the expectation was not a deep run. It was simply to show up and compete with dignity. That context is everything, because when a team that has waited that long walks onto a World Cup stage and produces a performance of this magnitude, 6 goals, a clean sheet, utter dominance, it is not just a result. It is a statement about where Canadian football stands right now. This is a country that has invested seriously in its football infrastructure, its youth development, its professional league, and the result of that investment is a generation of players who do not look like tourists at this level. They look like they belong. A 6-0 victory at a FIFA World Cup does not come by accident. It comes from belief, from structure, and from a collective identity that says Canada is no longer just happy to be here. They are here to compete. That shift in mentality, from participant to contender, is the real story behind this scoreline, and Canadian football fans are right to feel that something has fundamentally changed. Every team performance of this scale has individuals who elevate it, and for Canada, the conversation has to center on Alphonso Davies. Davies is the player who perhaps more than anyone else embodies this new era of Canadian football. He grew up as a refugee, built a life in Canada, and became one of the most dynamic attacking fullbacks on the planet. When Davies plays for Canada, he carries a weight of symbolism that very few athletes carry for their national team. He is the poster child for what this generation of Canadian football is supposed to look like. Against Qatar, with the freedom to express himself on a World Cup stage, Davies was electric. His ability to carry the ball at pace, to beat defenders in open space, and to contribute at both ends of the pitch gave Canada a genuine weapon that Qatar simply could not neutralize. But this was not a one-man performance. The collective attacking output, 6 goals shared, presumably across multiple scorers, tells you that Canada had depth and fluidity in their attacking play, not just one outlier moment. What makes Davies' story so compelling is the trajectory. From the circumstances of his early life to representing his nation at the highest level of the sport and producing performances like this, it is the kind of footballer's journey that connects with people beyond the sport itself. He is the face of Canadian football's transformation, and results like this add another chapter to a story that is still being written. The defining moment of a 6-0 win is not always a single goal. Sometimes it is the moment when the opposing team stops believing, when their shape dissolves, their heads drop, and you can see from the body language that the result is already settled. Against Qatar, Canada had that moment relatively early. Once Canada established their lead, and it became clear that Qatar had no answer for Canada's press, their pace in transition, or their attacking combinations, the floodgates opened in the way they only do when one team is genuinely superior on the day. In terms of a single visual moment, the opening goal carries the most weight. First goals in World Cup matches are loaded with tension and release, years of anticipation collapsing into a single strike. For Canada, breaking the deadlock would have sent a wave of relief through the team and the fan base simultaneously. But the moment that truly defines this match narratively is whatever put Canada 4 or 5 goals ahead. Because at that point, this stopped being a football match and became a statement. It became the kind of result that gets shown in highlight reels for years, the kind that gets shown to young Canadian kids as evidence that their country belongs at this level. 6 goals at a World Cup is not routine for any team. It signals intent, confidence, and technical quality. For a nation writing its World Cup story in real time, this match, this scoreline is the defining early chapter. A scoreline like 6-0 at a World Cup invites the obvious tactical question. How does a team score 6 goals against organized opposition at this level? The answer almost always comes down to high pressing and transition speed, and Canada demonstrated both in clinical fashion. High pressing, the tactical concept worth understanding here, is when a team aggressively attempts to win the ball back in the opponent's own half immediately after losing possession, rather than retreating into a defensive shape. The goal is to force errors high up the pitch, closer to the opponent's goal, which creates short, high-percentage scoring opportunities. For this to work, you need players with the fitness to press repeatedly, the intelligence to press in coordinated patterns rather than individually, and the pace to punish teams once the ball is won. Canada, with Davies providing the burst down the left flank and a midfield willing to cover ground, are well suited to this approach. When a team like Qatar, who despite being hosts and having prepared thoroughly, were not a team built for extended World Cup campaigns at this level, faces relentless pressure without the individual quality to play through it, the defensive structure breaks down, gaps appear, Goals follow. What Canada showed was not just athleticism, but tactical discipline. Pressing systems fail when players press out of frustration or desperation. They succeed when players press in organized waves, trusting their teammates to cover the spaces they vacate. Canada's 6-goal performance is evidence that their tactical organization has reached a genuinely high level. This is a team coached with a clear system, not just a collection of talented individuals. So where does a 6-0 World Cup win place Canada in the conversation about the tournament's genuine contenders? That is the debate this result opens up. Before the tournament, Canada were respected but not feared. A result of this magnitude forces a reassessment. When you score 6 goals against any World Cup opponent, you earn the right to be discussed alongside the heavyweights in your group and beyond. The counter-argument, of course, is that Qatar were always expected to struggle. They qualified as hosts, not on merit, and their squad was not assembled to beat elite opposition. So does a 6-0 against Qatar tell us something meaningful about Canada's ceiling, or does it flatter their quality? This is genuinely worth debating. The optimistic reading is that Canada played with a freedom and a clinical edge that you simply cannot fake. You cannot score 6 World Cup goals through luck or a weak opponent. The cautious reading is that the true test of Canada's quality will come against stronger opponents, and a comfortable win here might create a false confidence. What this result certainly does is change the psychological landscape. Canada's players now carry the confidence of a historic performance. Their opponents in subsequent matches must now take them seriously in a way they perhaps did not before. In international football, perception shapes reality. And right now the perception of Canadian football has shifted significantly. So here's the question we want you to answer in the comments. Is Canada's 6-0 Qatar evidence of a genuine World Cup contender, or the best possible version of a favorable draw?